part 3 of a 4-part series, in which a game about an avocado and a young inventor sketches out new ideas for both television and video games. So what's going on with âthe, the direct manipulation mentioned earlier, and the sense that this lens of touching TV itself is in part enabled by the game engine, presumably Unity, and its ability to drop interactions on top of 3D environments mapped onto pre-filmed sequences. In other words, you control âthe in Avo Aalborg, moving a real-time animation over a set of filmed physical backdrops and scenes of Billie's studio or of other locations. By apparently moving âthe freely in that world, you lean into the point of viewing in âthe exists on a separate layer superimposed onto the set, yet thanks to real-time lighting effects and 3D scanning, the bumpy, green protagonist feels situated within, rather than upon, and so do you. This apparent freedom, albeit necessarily limited, movementâ, with the latter really only a stack of pre-filmed elements piled up in a somewhat editable sequence, one ends up feeling rather disengaged, particularly when the experience is overlaid with the cynicism judging the narrative, and the set is essentially lean out. In this balance of lean in, lean out, it is a quite different experience to traditional console games, like Call of Duty on Battle, which stressed the lean in engagement, with sometimes overly long lean-back moments in the extravagant cutscenes, exposition and spectacle in Call of Duty, halftime commentary in Battle, I'd love to see the analytics on how often such cutscenes are skipped. With âthe, this is a more rat-a-tat relationship, with shorter cutscenes dropped almost seamlessly in and out of lean-in gameplay elements, and this more engaged with the most lean-in, lean-out. This dynamic capability is underpinned by a fascinating approach to camera work. In gameplay, the backdrops are filmed sequences, without âthe, but with the young inventor Billie and other active elements. These are necessarily shot beforehand, yet due to âthe's real-time freedom of movement, the thing is under your finger. After all, which could involve numerous camera angles, Playdeo have created software that essentially picks the best camera tool present in real time. If âthe is walking along a long planar space, like a propped-up plank of wood between two tables, this might be best viewed side-on, a sort of sonographic view that David Lean might tend towards, were he given a shed and an avocado rather than a desert and petrol Toole. Yet as you reach a decision point, you, the player, need to see what's ahead, so the optimum camera position there might switch to overhead, at an angle, to enable a glimpse of what surrounds the counter. Having drawn a dotted line in that direction, for âthe to follow, the best camera might switch to one behind âthe, watching the fruit totter off. The sound design, cleverly, does the same trick. Because âthe has CGI-level freedom of movement, any of these events could happen next, or you could turn around and head back up the plank to some beams you thought might be in another direction, hence a more distant view from behind, along the length of the plank, entirely perpendicular to the original David Lean shot, and all that could happen in a few seconds, or not. Playdeo's software understands each of these cameras, their various viewpoints, their efficacy in terms of game elements, beans to collect, are objects important to the plot, are their sheer aesthetic qualities, does it look good? Essentially, at any one time, each of the cameras is assigned a value, based on a rapid assessment of these facets, trading off function against aesthetics, and the winning camera gets the edit, again, in real time, and in response to the subtle nudges your fingers are making. The software suspends a kind of net around you on the space of possibility defined by the accumulated views from fuzzy attention-seeking cameras, and allocates camera time based on the best possible decision at that point. Playdeo's Ruby Bell, the traditional movement of the virtual cameras in games, has complete fluidity, as it is moving around in a space generated by CGI. Yet that freedom of movement and potential edit usually conforms to a series of typical positions. To simplify things, third-person shooter, first-person shooter, panning panorama, as in Sparks Gamasutra, and so on. To take this approach, based on hybridizing a small fruit-shaped CGI element into 3D mapped CGI spaces, overlaid onto pre-shot backdrop sequences or views, is somehow more filmic, more TV. As such, it sits between interactive and non-interactive entertainment, and creates a space, integrated, and not opposed, as is usually assumed, as say within this piece at Gamasutra, are executed, flitting between interactive spaces and cutscene sequences, have trees to do both. Simultaneously, it asks questions about a real-time cinematography, and the notion of an algorithmic director-editor making decisions in real time. You can find numerous research papers studying the idea of interactive cinematography, yet not many examples of genuine combinations of interactive and cinematic cameras, as with the Avo Aalborg University's Paolo Burelli writes, in Game Cinematography, From Camera Control to Player Emotions, 2016, the popular Haigh-Hutchinson title Macrae suggests this possibility, and in a very different and demanding genre. At moments, it moves its relatively traditional form of third-person shooter camera control scheme into another mode, which Haigh-Hutchinson, in his paper Real-Time Cameras, 2009, calls predetermined, based on multiple cameras placed around the environment and switches view during the game in real time, a both cinematic and functional effect. As per Avo, most of Devil May Cry's typical virtual camera movement, unlike Avoid, is entirely CGI, yet there is suggestion of this switching between multiple predetermined views. It will be interesting to see if the fast-paced demands of action games can explore this mode too. You can sense it in this strangely appealing and esoteric fan video of the backend of the game engine. The question for the director-editor game designer here concerns this balancing act between creating a convincing universe, telling a compelling story, and providing enough functional hooks to create a game. Broadly again, in other words, filming this new hybrid format is not simply about iteration, but interaction, function. This, again, pushes it close to design practice, as well as being a filmic and narrative concern, and draws on design's perennial challenge to find a compromise between function and aesthetics. Playdeo's Nick Ludlam says that the look ahead of the line drawing helps the code create a set of camera cuts that will frame you in the most interesting way at that moment. But what is most interesting is, well, an interesting question. Lest this seem little overly algorithmic, it's worth noting Alfred Hitchcock's belief in framing and editing, that everything is subservient to the narrative, to the emotion. In his famous rolling conversations with François Truffaut, he outlined his own methods and, yes, rules. Hitchcock had little time for this apparent compromise between function and aesthetics. He repeatedly suggested there was one primary intent behind his editing and framing: the story, hardly the most reliable of narrators. Hitchcock also relentlessly invented and reinvented cinema's aesthetic, Yet in the Truffaut conversations, he repeatedly comes back to the primacy of storytelling and far visual invention to get us there. For Hitchcock, and arguably most video games, the story unfolds visually, through action rather than prose. For Hitchcock, this is not a novel, after all, and the constraints of the theater stage need not apply either. In Scott McCloud's understanding comics, a key text for interaction designers. As it happens, McCloud outlines a vocabulary for such transitions. Transitions are key to games, film and comics, obviously, but the key issue of closure, the viewer-reader closing the gap between the frames as their own invention, also suggests a deeper level of agency in viewer and reader, a concept common to literary theory and practice concerning the postmodern short story, whose brevity and note necessarily draws the reader into completely text. After Angela Carter,